1.
Hello, I'm Catherine Good, Program Management Officer in the Civil Society Unit in the Department of Global Communications at the United Nations, DGC, as you know us. We thank you for joining us and supporting our first virtual civil society chat. Before we begin, I would like to ask you to join the conversation online and use the hashtag UN with Civil Society in your posts. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you'll see all of our handles at the bottom of the PowerPoint slide here. Our chat series is intended to give our civil society organizations the opportunity to share their work. Given the crucial role civil society is playing in the global response to the coronavirus pandemic, back in March, we asked civil society organizations to share their stories and respond to a call to tell us how they've been responding to the coronavirus pandemic. To date, we've had more than 320 responses, and you can see where our organizations are coming from on this slide. The majority of responses have come from Asia and Africa, but we're pleased that we have so much civil society engagement from all over the world. On the next slide, you'll see where activities are really happening. On this slide, we wanted to highlight for you the kinds of work that civil society organizations are doing. So more than 600 activities have been undertaken by civil society organizations who responded to us. The majority of those are happening in Asia and in Africa, and those activities typically are around counseling services, raising awareness, distributing food, distributing protective equipment, educating people in the community, and helping people to understand the best hygiene practices to prevent the COVID-19. Today, as I've said, we've received more than 300 submissions, and we've posted 30 stories on our website, and we're sharing on our social media accounts. Please follow us and check the website to keep up with these stories. We're happy to have some of our NGOs who shared their stories with us here today to tell theirs. We hope this chat inspires action, prompts collaboration, amplifies the examples of how civil society is contributing to their communities from around the world during this coronavirus pandemic. We're confident that a solid outcome could follow in documenting civil society's activities and solutions and sharing with the larger civil society audience and the United Nations. Now, I would like to hand over to our civil society partner, our moderator, Mr. Manav Subodh, the co-founder of the 1M1B Foundation in India. Manav?
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here moderating this wonderful session. And I would like to start with a small story. I come from India. Right now I'm in Bangalore. And ever since the lockdown was announced in India, we've been hearing news, and not just news, negative news, right? There's a story that I heard that there's a migrant worker, age 46, who stayed in Gujarat, which is on the western part of India. He walked 1,800 miles with his family to reach his home state, which is in the northeast part of India called Assam, just because he and his family lost everything. They lost their job, they lost their livelihood, and they had no option but to go home. And in between, they somehow managed to get food, some sanitation, and they survived to tell a story. Tell a story never to return back to the cities again. Well, there are many such stories that we are hearing, not just from India, but from everywhere and every part of the world. And what we'll be doing today is something remarkable. We'll be discussing not just the struggles, not just the negative news. We will be talking about positive news and how the civil society really has stepped up during the pandemic and contributed significantly in their communities. So it's really my pleasure. It's a big pleasure to be moderating this session where I will be hosting some excellent speakers who will be sharing the stories of how NGOs have contributed in this time of struggle. And I must thank the UN Department of Global Communications for giving us this opportunity. This is the first chat series, and this gets all of us together to share what we have done, learn from each other, exchange notes, and share best practices so that we can amplify the impact that we are making in our communities. At this moment, I would like to start with the wonderful panelists I have today. So we have Victoria Edmonds, who's from the Salvation Army, as one of the speakers. Then we have Edwin Vallecillo from NPH International, Director of Medical Services, who will be our second panelist. Then we have Muzaffer Baca, who's the Vice President at the International Blue Crescent IBC, Middle East. And we have then Bimpi Bambos Martins, who's the founder strategy for mentoring initiatives and leadership at SMILE, which is SMILE, from Nigeria, Africa. So we have a very interesting session planned, and I would like to welcome all of you, and with all of you, all the wonderful people and the host and the people in the UN Department of Global Communication and my panelists into this session. So as I dive in, I would like to share the story that we have seen here in India. We could go to the next slide. So as I was starting in the beginning, one of the biggest crises that we have seen in India is the migrant. The migrants who lost jobs and who wanted to go home. India, if you know, has 1.3 billion people. And out of that 1.3 billion, 70% of them stay in the 680,000 villages of India. Many of them come to cities to work, and when the lockdown was announced, most of them who belonged to the informal work category lost their jobs, and they had to go back because they didn't know what to do. And this created at least, and these data, I mean, needs to be validated, but we think this is just the minimum figure because this data is still not available, but we believe this like at least 23 million people, according to some trusted sources, who returned back to the villages. And this created a huge pressure on the rural economy. These were people who were returning back with loss of livelihood, no jobs, no food, and at the risk of carrying COVID-19 with them back to the rural India. So rural India was poised to become the new hotspot. One of the things that my organization 1M1B, which stands for 1 million for 1 billion land, are working was how can we revive livelihood? Next slide, please. So what we landed up doing was we took up a tailoring unit. Now you would have heard a number of tailoring units in different parts of the world. This has given livelihood to many, but there are a number of tailoring units that are in the villages which have the infrastructure, but no work. So this gave us an opportunity to revive this tailoring unit, which had no work, and turn this around into a PPE manufacturing center. We got a huge order from the state government of Andhra Pradesh, which wanted PPE kits for its hospitals. And this turned around to be an opportunity for about 240 women whose men have lost their jobs. So this turned out to be a blessing for them, and they landed up producing the PPE kits and masks. And the order that they have is close to $93,000 US, and that is giving them an income and predictable income for the next 6 months. So the women have come to the rescue of the men who lost their jobs. And these were women who were like already in the villages. They were taking care of their families, and they turned out to be saviors for the family this time by contributing economically. And this is a story that we sort of want to share today on how this unit got revived and has turned out to be a big center for employment for many women. And this is only spreading so that we can look at many such centers in the villages of India. When I posted this on my LinkedIn account and Facebook, I had a number of people also asking if we can export this to Europe and United States. So the women are now gearing up to export the first PPE and the mask to the United States. And hopefully that will come through with the flights now opening up. The other story that I want to share quickly is that the government has rolled out a number of schemes to revive livelihood and job creation. And these schemes, next slide please, are really not reaching the people in the villages where we prominently work, because a number of people who are eligible for loans don't fall and don't have a credit rating. And this has turned out to be a big disadvantage for people who have lost livelihood. So many people who are coming back from the cities want to start a new business, but they don't have access to loans. So we have this initiative called Business Raja, which is like a rural Shark Tank for the villages of India, which is scouting women entrepreneurs who want to revive their families, revive their communities. And here are two stories of the women entrepreneurs who got funded through a crowdfunding campaign that we started because they were not able to access bank loans because they didn't have the documents, they didn't have the credit rating, and they didn't really fall under any of the banking regulations. So our team of fellows are working with them to really start their businesses now. And here are two wonderful stories. One is of a girl who wants to help her father, who's a farmer, set up a greenhouse. And the other is a woman who wants to set up a teddy bear store because toys are in huge demand. And she thought that the teddy bears that are available in the cities that could be brought in and could be made available to even children in the villages because they don't have access to teddy bears. A wonderful story, but a story of hope and how these women now are creating a path for revival for themselves and their communities. Agriculture and micro businesses are big in India, and this is something that we've been focusing on. And with the support of a lot of our other partners, next slide, please. This is the impact slide that we want to show, that this is the impact that we've been able to create across various segments. 240 women have got jobs. We have raised about 93,000 worth of government orders, and there are a bunch of things that are happening, which are story of hope and revival. So with this, I would like to invite the second speaker that we have, a panelist, and we have Victoria Edmonds from the Salvation Army North America talking to us about challenges in distributing food during the pandemic. Over to you, Victoria.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're at. I thank the Department of Global Communications for the opportunity to share with you some of the work that the Salvation Army is doing globally and in North America during the COVID-19 crisis. The Salvation Army is an international movement, and we're located in 131 countries around the world, with our headquarters located in London, England. The Salvation Army started in 1865, is now 155 years old and in operation, and we have been registered with the United Nations since 1947 in the ECOSOC and DGC status. Our work covers many areas in order to help and improve the needs and lives of men and women, boys and girls around the world. We're involved in the addictions program, emergency disaster services to armed forces, health programs, education programs, and services to communities that we serve. Today, I'm sharing with you the work of the Salvation Army in North America and the work that we are doing. But I want to share with you a couple of the countries outside the United States that we have been doing work in globally. The first slide, in Kenya, we have set up a screening sites for people to come and to be tested in the rural areas of Kenya. And in Papua New Guinea, we have been preparing 2,000 1-liter hand sanitizer bottles to be distributed daily throughout the country. And in Bahrain, we have been providing 250 people with prepaid grocery gift certificates each day in order to ensure that they have a reliable source of food and that their livelihoods they're able to live out their livelihoods on a day-to-day basis. And in Zimbabwe, there are 300 people that the state has declared as vulnerable people and individuals, and that we are providing essential food so they don't need to venture out into the high popular areas. Slide 2. Rice, cooking oil, soy chunks, sugar, flour are being provided, as well as supplies of bottles of water and soap. And 700 people are receiving daily soap and advice on good hygienes. We in Tanzania, we are working very closely in coordination with the Ministry of Health and the World Health Organization in making sure that people who are high risk have been identified and provided with hand washing materials, soap, sanitizer, buckets, and an address system that was set up so that communities in the outlying areas can receive the health messages that are sent out, and they can know what's being said on a day-to-day basis. We even provide messages on health updates at bus stops and other vital locations in Tanzania. Next slide. In Guam, we focus on providing essential food to vulnerable peoples whose situations have become very critical during the COVID. 700 individuals are receiving soap and good advice on hygienes. In Chicago, next slide. The city of Chicago has designated the Salvation Army as the lead agency for mass care and COVID response. 400 frozen meals are distributed daily. We continue to build our resources for immediate long-term response. Meals are dropped off daily at city-designated sites for distribution. Food and bottled water are distributed to the first responders daily, and we keep them equipped. In Arizona, the Salvation Army is providing room-to-room delivery and offering drive-through meals to homeless and to seniors. We also provide child care free of charge for first responders. We have set up an emotional and spiritual care hotline for those looking for help. And we have a team that is calling seniors to make sure their needs are met. And the Salvation Army is also providing social skills to seniors to help them stay connected to their family and friends. The Salvation Army has been designated as the lead donation management for Arizona, so we warehouse and distribute all in-kind donations made to the state for effective individuals, families, NGOs providing disaster assistance. In New York City, we are the partnering agency that provides free showers. We provide food. We pay for housing for those who need to be quarantined, and we feed children daily. We take the food to their house for breakfast and lunch, and even on weekends. In Washington State, we offer hygiene and sanitation services, including laundry washing. We also operate an outreach program to people living in their cars and other vehicles, as well as case management. We deploy mobile food delivery throughout the state daily. We operate shelters and voucher programs. In Idaho, Salvation Army is fully engaged with city and county emergency operations. We help deliver the mail from the local post office to quarantine residents. And also we provide meals to those shut-ins so they don't have to come out. We give them gift cards too. And we offer a vital platform of exercising, Bible studies, worship, and other activities so that they get that interaction with people. In Montana, we are working on the local indigenous lands, and we are helping where we can, and we offer any help that we can give to them. Next slide. O'Hare Airport, the Salvation Army is the emergency disaster provider, and we provide snacks, meals, drinks, blankets, cots, pillows, face shields, sanitizers, and we are the supplier of meeting the needs of the people who are come through the airport or who have been staying in the airport. We are the provider for the Emergency City Operations Center, and we meet the needs at the airport where we can. I thank you for listening, for your time, and we try to give our best in all that we do and to meet the needs of every person that comes in contact with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. That was so inspiring, and that's amazing work done by the Salvation Army. And we'll come back to you for questions, but let's get on to the next speaker. So the next speaker is Edwin Velocilo, who will talk about immediate challenges as the coronavirus starts to affect the Latin America. Over to you, Edwin.
Yeah, thank you, Manav. So hello, everyone. My name is Edwin Velocilo, and I am representing NPH International in my capacity as Director of Medical Services. It is an honor to be sharing our experience and the work that NPH does in this important chat series. So we thank the Global Communication Department for opening this space that strengthens the work we do and allow civil society organizations to join forces to combat the common threat of COVID-19. A special thanks to the leader of this department and organizer of this event. So next slide, please. Yeah, the next one, please. So this is our NPH International logo. So what is NPH and what it does? So NPH stands for Nuestros Pequeños Hermanos y Hermanas, or little brothers and sisters in English, and I will be referring to our little brothers and sisters as NPH moving forward. NPH is an international organization whose mission is to serve vulnerable and socially disadvantaged populations in Latin America, mainly through alternative residential care, but also through prevention and care programs in communities. NPH strives to create a family environment for vulnerable families and works hand in hand with government authorities to do this work. All this work is achieved with the support of the generosity of mainly private donors. NPH vision is a poverty-free world where all children fulfill their unique potential, becoming productive members of society serving in their communities. NPH is the result of an act of love on the part of its founder, Father William Watson, in 1954, and today maintains operations in 9 countries of Latin America, 4 countries in Central America, 2 in the Caribbean, Mexico, Bolivia, and Peru. NPH is aligned to the 2030 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially goal number 1, ending poverty, and NPH achieved its mission through comprehensive programs that ensure food security, access to health services, education, and a safe home. 6,300 children receive full support at NPH. Community program provided 107,000 different services in 2019. In Honduras, NPH was recently an example of best practices before COVID-19 and support to the government to provide and share experience with all NGOs that protect children in that country. Next slide, please. So prevention is our main strategy. Latin America, as you may know, is now the epicenter of the pandemic, and we are concerned about seeing the increase of cases every day. Professionals working with NPH and the families we protect are at risk, so specific biosecurity protocols have been designed for COVID-19, and specific contingency plans have been developed to fight disease outbreak in our residences, a scenario that has so far been avoided. Health expert groups have been formed to increase transparency on how to communicate COVID in our environments and in the NPH community, but always protecting the privacy and dignity of the families we serve. Some strategies to highlight in our protocol have been to reorganize the working format of employees, avoid large meetings, close schools, children receive their classes by electronic means. We have prepared a space with the basic condition for care of sick and suspected patients, and we have equipped them with personal protective equipment, and we have purchased some necessary supplies such as vitamins, basic medicines, and thermometers, among other actions. In addition, local health teams at every home continue to carry out essential prevention activities, such as participating in vaccination, surveillance and monitoring campaigns for children with chronic disease and disabilities, providing healthy child checkups, and ensuring the provision of medicines. Next slide, please. So the education talks on COVID-19 have been key. In our space, and both staff and children have received talks on COVID-19, and we consider that education is a fundamental piece to fight this disease. Psychologists continue to provide mental health services, especially for employees who have suffered a heavy workload, but also for children looking for strategies to address their emotional needs. Social workers continue to take action to maintain communication between families through video calls and other technologies avenues. Efforts have been made to achieve food supply, and support have been received from organizations such as UNICEF and the Food Bank in Peru, among other private donations that have support food security within the residences. Next slide, please. So NPH is also projected to communities and community programs prioritized by NPH, such as families receiving scholarships, children attending NPH schools, infants attending daycare centers, which are now closed, family centers, family reintegration programs beneficiaries, among others. This group of beneficiaries have been identified and donation of masks have been made, in addition to necessities according to the capacities of each NPH program to provide for these families during this time of difficulty. Next slide, please. In Haiti, NPH sponsored and maintained the only pediatric hospital in the country. Since the start of the pandemic, at St. Damien Hospital, the staff performed exceptional work. They have readapted rooms for the care of a higher volume of patients with respiratory disease, and the hospital has been selected by the government of Haiti to be a reference hospital to receive and treat pediatric patients with COVID-19. In Haiti, but equally in the region, health personnel are experiencing stigma, and even in some regions, they don't believe COVID is a real threat. All this become a challenge, also considering the existing social inequality. This pandemic is expected to push more families into poverty, and potentially vulnerable population will be exposed to scenarios of abuse in all its form and extreme poverty. Finally, I would like to conclude by pointing out that NPH continues to aim to promote safe environments with a family-friendly approach, access to basic service and healthy environments, in its alternative care homes, and at the same time continue to provide differentiated support through community programs. So on behalf of the entire NPH international community, I would like to thank the United Nations Global Communication Department for the opportunity to be here today. I hope that what I have shared about NPH response to the current global situation may inspire all of us here today to continue fighting for and protecting the most vulnerable of our society. If anyone is interested in learning more about NPH, I welcome you to visit our website at www.nph.org. I look forward to answering your question at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edwin, for sharing that. You definitely have inspired me. I would really like to connect with you just to understand how NPH is working in underserved settings and providing relief work in medicine and healthcare. So it's amazing work, and I was particularly inspired with the work that you're doing for children and their mental wellness. So I think a big, huge congratulations to you and your team. I'm sure there's a lot of best practices that we can share with you so that we can implement the similar model in our community. So thank you so much, Edwin. Okay, let's move on to our next speaker, Muzaffer Baca, who's the Vice President at IBC in the Middle East, and he would be talking about COVID-19 response program in Syria, Yemen, and recently in Libya. Over to you, Muzaffer.
Hi, everybody, and thanks to Department of Global Communication Civil Society Unit to allocate us this opportunity to introduce the problem that we are facing in the Middle East region, especially in the MENA region, not only Middle East and North Africa region. As you know, the Syrian crisis is not just a political crisis or a humanitarian crisis, but it has its effects on the health issues of the region also. Turkish government, taking this pandemic as a global pandemic, has launched a campaign to assist all the countries around Turkey and worldwide to supply them, to provide them with corona response kits, respirators, testing units and protective units. And between 151 countries that have requested the Turkish government assistance, 132 of them, they got assistance from the Turkish government. In this framework, as a Turkish NGO, International Blue Crescent also is very active to respond to the corona cases in Syria, in Yemen, and Libya. As you know, Syria, Yemen, and Libya are the most prone countries for the corona pandemic, for the impact of the corona pandemic, because of their very, very poor health infrastructure. For example, in Yemen, testing is almost around 10,000, and between them 327 cases have been positive, and from them 81 people died. That shows that almost one of the 4 people who have been tested positive, they are dying. According to London research, if it goes this way in Yemen, around 460,000 people will be infected, and around 64,000 people will lose their lives because of the corona. There are no records, there are no statistics that we can trust. The same applies to North Syria and inside Syria also. Because the American embargo started to affect very badly the state-controlled, Assad-controlled area of Syria, there is a very big deficit, a very big problem to acquire medicine for the ordinary people and also for the state. Regarding North Syria, the case is worse because there are no enough facilities to test the corona or also to respond to the corona. I don't want to go in the further details for Libya, for example. Libya is almost divided, and their health capacity is able to do just 20,800 tests until now. And from those tests, 571 are positive and 10 died. That shows that the impact of the corona is not assessed, is not calculated yet in those countries, and how big danger is for the worldwide community also, because there is no control, there is no assessment, there is no real figures, and also response capacity in those countries. What IBC is doing in those countries? Thank you for providing me the first slide. We are doing public awareness campaigns in the camps in Syria and in Yemen, and also in different areas in Libya. Especially priority we are giving to the schools and the children, because they are the most prone to the corona, because they are not aware about the protective measures. In addition, in the camps, we are doing common projects with their families also. Next slide, please. In addition to the public awareness campaigns, we are providing corona test kits to the health units in Syria, in Yemen, and Libya. In Syria, we provided about 3,000 corona test kits and about 1,000 infrared thermometers and protective kits to the 8 hospitals and 9 public health units that they are dealing with the corona. 4 of these hospitals are related with the Turkish Health Ministry, which is the main responding agency against corona pandemic in North Syria. Next slide, please. In Yemen, we did the same for the 26 health units, emergency health units that they are still operative against any epidemic. Now they are using mainly against the pandemic of corona, those emergency health units. There are in total 59 emergency health units all over the country, so to respond to any epidemics, but unfortunately just 25 of them are operational, and we are providing to them again corona test kits and corona infrared thermometers, so to do the test in the camps or for those who are applying to those emergency centers. But the problem in Yemen is there is no enough facilities, bedding facilities, and also corona isolation units. So we need to focus on them also. In addition to the provision of test kits and infrared thermometers and protective materials, we do disinfectation campaigns in the settlements where those people are living. Believe me, it is like it is worse than the animal living areas. Those areas, there is no hygienic capacity, there is no hygienic measures. So if such a pandemic impact starts in those areas, the results will be tragic. Please go to the next slide. As you see in the slide also, we do prepare corona protection packages. We have a center in Kilis and in Turkey where in our community center we are producing the masks and a lot of protective kits, and we are providing them to all of these 3 countries free of charge. Until now, we provide more than 100,000 masks in Syria, about 30,000 masks in Yemen. Some of them, around 10,000 of them, they are professional masks that the doctors are using, because we need to protect them also first against the infection in the hospitals. Next slide, please. As you see, we have also public awareness. In the public awareness campaigns, we are printing tens of thousands of different brochures in the different languages, in Arabic, in English, or other languages, and we are distributing them to the people where we are responding. And until now, we got very good results, especially with the banners in the central transport locations, in the main avenues, and also in the schools, in the mosques. Next slide, please. As I summarized, it's the last slide, sorry for that. As I summarized, International Blue Crescent is an NGO, international NGO. Its headquarters in Turkey, but we are working very closely also with the governments and the health ministers of those countries, in addition with the United Nations, World Health Organization, UNHCR, and IOM during our activities. Thank you again for allocating us the time to provide some information about what we are doing, and I'm ready to respond to any related question with the question and answers.
Thank you. Thank you, Muzaffer. Thank you so much for sharing that work. That's really remarkable. At a time when testing kits were really difficult for a number of regions, I think that was a big relief work that you had provided, especially in the low resource setting. I do know that, unless people really get that, there's nothing that can happen. And I really admire the work that you have been doing to raise awareness, especially the bigger pandemic that we've seen is fake news. And if people are more aware about what COVID-19 is and how to take care, I think that is going to solve a lot of problems. Thank you so much for sharing those stories with us.
Thank you.
Great. So let's move on to our 4th panelist, Bimpi Bambos Martins, who's the founder and strategy for mentoring initiative and leadership at Smile. And she's going to talk about efforts to cushion the effect of the pandemic on the underserved youth within the community. Over to you, Bimpi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to especially thank the dynamic team of the United Nations Department of Communications for this opportunity. We are so honored to be a civil society organization associated with the United Nations Department of Global Communications and also with the Economic and Social Council. Next slide, please. So in March 2020, when our Young Leaders Mentoring Program for
Bimpi, sorry to interrupt. Can you speak closer to your microphone, please? We are having some challenge hearing you.
All right. Is it clearer now?
Yes, much better. Thank you so much. And sorry to interrupt.
All right. Thanks. Sorry about that. I'll just start with I just want to start by especially thanking the very dynamic team of the United Nations Department of Global Communications for this opportunity. We are an organization that's so honored to be a civil society organization associated with the United Nations Department of Global Communications and also with the United Nations Economic and Social Council. Can I have the first slide, please? So in March 2020, we were in the middle of our Young Leaders Mentoring Program for indigent students across 10 public high schools in Lagos, Nigeria, when COVID-19 suddenly struck. Nothing could have prepared us for the significant disruption the pandemic caused, because first we had to suspend all in-person programs, including this one. We had to suspend them indefinitely because schools were closed and also because of social distancing. Moving this program online and virtually would have been the next best option. But unfortunately, the reality of working with the underprivileged and also the digital divide became so apparent. So online learning was not going to be an option because the young people that we work with, majority of them are indigent students, have no access to Android phones, laptops, internet devices, internet and also digital devices. So online learning was not going to be an option. While we're still trying to grapple with the next steps and the way forward because COVID-19 is new to everyone, I started receiving distress calls and messages from a few of our youth beneficiaries from low-income background. And even a parent had called in to talk to us about difficulties having feeding themselves and feeding their families. So immediately we thought that the next best thing to do was to start soliciting for food donations to provide emergency relief for individuals and families. And thankfully, two of our trustees and a new partner of ours responded to that call for support with food donations and were able to help by donating food items to some young people in distress. I would like to quote Kathy Calvin at this point, who said, "Giving is not just about making a donation, it is about making a difference." So in our responses, what has always been priority for us is to make sure that whatever we're doing, no matter how small, must be making a difference. And that quote has sort of been the guiding principle at this time. So to make a difference, we chose to donate food items to the underappreciated and underpaid public school teachers, and also the frequently overlooked and forgotten youth with disabilities in one of the homes in Lagos, Nigeria. Now, working closely with our leadership of our youth alumni, we were still trying to work out the next steps and other interventions that we could bring on board at this time because of the sudden reality of COVID-19. And what we realized was that our interventions were going to be ongoing, were going to be evolving and responding to the needs as they arise. So we had all our interventions pretty much in two broad categories. There's going to be immediate, urgent and short-term interventions like food donations from time to time. And a second category, which is the medium long-term intervention, which will cover things like equipping youth with skills for a post-COVID world and other investments in technology for underprivileged youth. So we sought to address the psychological and emotional needs of the youth at this period. it's important that beyond, the outward, we need to understand that there are some things going on emotionally and psychologically. We recognize that COVID-19 has made the vulnerable even more vulnerable. And because of that, we don't want to underestimate the anxiety, the frustration, the emotional stress, the mental stress, the economic stress, and even the fear of an uncertain future many youth, particularly those from underprivileged background, now face. So one of the ways we've sought to address this is to go into empowering them, these concerns, is to guide them through this crisis. We're using the monthly WhatsApp chat series to enlighten and educate the few youth that have Android phones on the possible next steps and necessary skills they require to access limited opportunities. Through this chat series, we've had various resource persons cover topics like self-leadership in uncertain times. We've covered topics like thriving practices for youth in unprecedented times, and also keys to building successful relationships. The whole idea and the aim of this is to make sure that they stay relevant at times like this, is to help these young people to consciously influence their thoughts and behavior in order to achieve their personal goals and stay focused on their vision. We're also using this platform to help them focus on the value they have to offer, to proactively learn and develop the necessary skills, understand new trends, and the enabling technology in the area of their interests. We've also been encouraging them through this skills development platform to create opportunities for themselves. We ask them to be innovative, to be creative. We've encouraged them to maximize the digital space, to build their personal brands and ensure visibility for themselves, for visibility for their products, visibility for their skills, their talents, their services, and career. And then finally, another area that we decided to focus on so far is to support our civil society and NGO colleagues. In addition, continuing our effort to grow the Nigerian social sector, especially in a country like ours in Nigeria, where the civil society organizations and all the nonprofits are still not given the proper recognition as development partners. So it was very, very important to us, especially because we also have a campaign called the #YouthLeadChange campaign. So it was very important to us, and it was of great concern that as COVID-19 had struck, we wanted to assist our civil society colleagues and other organizations with navigating this period and ensuring their organization's survival. So through our Social Innovators Forum, it's a WhatsApp and a Facebook closed group, and through telephone conversations as well, we have shared information, shared guidelines that will enable our colleagues to evaluate their organizations, re-strategize, and adapt their work to ensure that they survive and to ensure that they cope with the sudden realities and demands. In rounding up, I believe no one knows the full implications and challenges the aftermath of COVID-19 still poses, because it's still unfolding. The effects of COVID-19 is still unfolding. Some have speculated that some low-income families are likely to fall deeper into poverty, and as a result, more children are likely to drop out of school. As a youth development organization, we recognize that our interventions will keep evolving and be ongoing for a long time. And we will keep responding to different challenges that arise in the face of this evolving crisis in order to protect the vulnerable youth who are now at critical risk. One thing is apparent: COVID-19 has exposed existing vulnerabilities and inequalities and helped organizations like us identify new priorities. We will be redoubling our efforts and our commitment to education, particularly investing in technology to close the digital divide that has now left underprivileged youth with fewer educational and economic opportunities and has caused their inability to carry on their work virtually. Once again, I would like to thank the Department of Global Communications for this opportunity, because it's at times like this that we appreciate the importance of belonging to a community like the DGC. And it's at times like this that we appreciate synergy. Our interdependence is obvious. Our interconnectedness is COVID-19 has brought us, the whole world is now it's obvious that we're all interconnected. And then finally, I would like to end with the words of Governor Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, who said, "Life is going to be different, but different can be better. Let's use this moment and experience to grow." Thank you.
Thank you, Wimpy. That was so inspiring. I really agree with you. This, the COVID time has really exposed the digital divide, and I think what you are doing is amazing. Especially what I like was the mentoring or the guiding part which you're doing to the young people. I think that is required more than ever before to make sure we manage their anxieties, we manage their fears. And I think something that you said really resonated with me is that you're helping them or teaching them to make a personal brand. I think that's really amazing. And I think that's what really young people need to do now, really make their personal brand and get out into the world and acquire the digital skills to be successful. Thank you so much, Wimpy, for sharing those insights with us. Okay, thank you to all the panelists. We will now open up for questions. And what you can do is type on your questions, and we'll be taking some of them, and we'll be doing that. We have about 30 minutes for that. So just let your questions come. And some of the questions are already here, and I see the first question. It says, how challenging is it to reach out to the most vulnerable during the pandemic? And if I can invite Edwin and later Muzaffer to share their insights on this. Edwin, specifically because you've been working in Haiti, and how was it to work there? How did you address the most vulnerable during these times? Edwin, if you can just put on your video.
Yeah, thank you. So can you repeat the question? I didn't get very well the question.
Yeah, the question is, how challenging is it to reach the most vulnerable during the pandemic?
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's very hard right now in these times, but we as an organization, we are trying to reach out the communities. We already have identified beneficiaries and target population in our programs, but it's really hard right now because of the quarantine measures. Right now in Latin America, we are experiencing very drastic measures in order to contain the virus. So it's a real challenge. We usually have to talk with government authorities in order to provide us with documents and some documents to help us to move around the country in the countries we work in order to reach out the population we are serving. But it's a real challenging that we are facing. And also in the residential homes that we care, it's also real challenging because right now public transport are not working. So we have to invest in put transport for staff, for all the people who help us in order to keep running the work we do. So yeah, that's something I can share. Thank you.
Thanks, Edwin. Muzaffer, would you like to take on the same question?
I wanted to add something else. In those countries, in Yemen and in Libya, there is a lockdown. In Libya, the lockdown is in the night times and in the weekends, 24 hours. In Yemen, in some areas like Mukalla, like Hadramut, they are for all the days. That's why it creates a big problem, logistic problem, to reach those people who are affected. In order to overcome this challenge, we are cooperating very closely with the health ministry, local units, and also with the security, because not only the coordination is important, but the security of our staff and To protect our staff against the pandemic is also very important. So we have a lot of guidelines and protective measures to protect our staff. Regarding North Syria, Turkey also had a lockdown, and in order to assess North Syria, we mobilized our teams inside North Syria. And because we have our offices and also we have implemented since 7 years a lot of food, hygiene, infrastructure, camp projects, in order to be more effective during this pandemic, we kept our staff inside Syria and we didn't move them to Turkey. And in addition, we got a lot of measures to protect them against the pandemic. Regarding how to reach those who are the most affected, we are cooperating very closely with the health ministers and their health units in the field, because they have the first information about what is going on regarding this pandemic issue. And in addition, we know very well where is the most poverty affected people. So we are running first to those areas where these poverty issues are extremely high, and in addition, where there is no any health facility and infrastructure to respond to the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Muzaffer. We have a lot of questions coming in, so great to see the participation. Please keep them coming. So my next question is for Bimpi. Bimpi, here's a question from you from Agastya, who's in grade 8, so he's really 14 years, currently working on AI for SDGs, and his question is that during the pandemic, a lot of people have been working from home. How do you see this changing the jobs and the SDG related to gender equality? So he's a youth, probably asking you the question as a youth, that what do you think would be the trends that would be following?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's like I said, it's still unfolding. One thing that is certain is that COVID-19 has caused a digital transformation, worldwide, and every aspect of work going forward will be based on technology. Technology is going to play a critical role on the journey ahead in every aspect of every work that we're doing. And that's why it's of so much concern to me, the digital divide, because there's a group of people that will continue to lag behind. People are already speculating that there's going to be a regression for those underprivileged that haven't got those digital tools to even begin to catch up with those that are privileged and have had those opportunities. So I just want to encourage every young person to embrace to get ready for the digital transformation. It's here already. A lot of us are lagging behind, but they have to embrace that. My only concern is that a lot of emphasis has to be laid on providing those basic tools for them. Without those tools, without those simple Android phones and so on, they're not going to be able to do anything significant going forward, because COVID-19 also poses a health threat, social distancing. You understand? So you can't have as much in-person activity as we'd love to. And so things are just going to be different, and it's going to be deeply rooted on technology.
Thanks a lot, Bimpi. That's very useful advice and great question, Agastya. Great to see you participating as a young leader into this chat series. Great work. So my next question is to Victoria. Victoria, the question really is that, and rather a very important one, how do you suggest we can work across organization to multiply our work and make it more efficient?
Well, thank you for the question. And I think one of the ways that we do it is we keep in contact with the local emergency management operation, which we have daily briefings. And I think if there's a local emergency team, that you come together daily so that we're not duplicating our services, and that if one organization or NGO is doing one thing in an area, we're not duplicating that in another area. So keeping contact with your local emergency management operations and other organizations, have a daily meeting early. That way you know what each other is doing.
Great, thank you Thank you, Victoria. That was very useful. We have some questions coming off our youth. One is anonymous and the other one is from Dikshita. But so Bimpi, I'll point these questions to you since you're doing wonderful work with the young people. The first question is, and I'll put both the questions together, maybe you can answer both of them. How do you think that young people should engage during this time? Is there an engagement strategy that you would suggest? And then Dikshita Aladi from India, she's asking, who's a grade 9 student, so it's like 14, 15 years old maybe, who's a youth leader, and she's saying that she's been working and helping children from low-income communities who lack education resources and currently out of school because of the virus. So her question is, in your experience in reaching out to children in countries like Nigeria, where internet is far off and not available, how are you able to contribute to the education of these children in these low resource settings? So it looks like Dikshita is doing a very similar work in her community.
All right, thank you for those questions. It is very challenging. That's why I said it's made the vulnerable more vulnerable, and all hands have to be on deck, and that includes government policies, it includes all those broadband and internet service providers. People have to help, help those that are underserved and those that are underprivileged. Technology is very, very integral to any kind of engagement at this time until schools are open or other avenues are open, and then we can have some kind of social distancing. But regardless of the social distancing, it's not going to be, it's a new abnormal. I don't like to call it a new normal, but it's a new abnormal that we have to get used to, that the only way forward is technology. So governments, private sector, public sector, and so on have to get involved in making these tools available. One thing that is certain is without those tools, it's going to be extremely difficult. If COVID-19 didn't have a health hazard in it, for instance, I would love to drive my car and get the team and go visit these young ones at home, but we can't even have contact. So that's why it's a big heartbreaking problem. If it wasn't one of those pandemics, that is infectious and has all those other challenges, there would have been other ways out, but social distancing is so key to addressing COVID-19. So contact has to be through other devices, through the media, through digital tools, and so on. So that's really what breaks my heart right now.
Thanks a lot, Bimpi. The next question is, I'll go to Edwin. Edwin, since you're working with children, there's a question on their mental wellness, and since you've done some work on this, many parents are complaining that viewing screen continuously is damaging children's eyesight. Is there any way around this? Do you see something that you would like to suggest? Is there any best practices?
Yeah, normally, nowadays people are connected by different digital medias like telephone, tablet, laptop. So usually doctors recommend, if you are in front of your screen, you have to take time to rest your eyes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then go back. And also, if you can use some equipment like eyeglass in order to protect your eyes, because it's pretty normal that if you are connected and watching a screen all the time, you can actually damage your eyes. So, and also not recommend that people not try to use technology's device, but also use some other books and do free activities and sport activities and some other recreative ways to spend their time.
So Edwin, I'll ask a follow-up question, related to that. The state that I'm staying here in India, they have banned online education for children below 10 years. Is that something that you would support, or is there any other remedy that you would suggest? Because many children are not going to school because of this now. I understand the effects of being online and the stress due to devices, but is it fair enough to have them out of education? Is there something else that you would like to suggest, which might just be a middle path?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I get right the question, but yeah, here in our residential facilities and also the programs we support, we already have some structure, and also we are like the teacher are not able to go to the schools, so they are sending their homework, their the tasks they assign to the children by electronic means. So the caregivers and the people who is in charge of those population are receiving that task. So they are printing out, or in some case, we have some space prepared in their homes in order to project the information so they can do the assignments. But yeah, you have to be very creative in order how you can continue to perform these activities with the children. So yeah, we use audiovisual instrument, but also we try to print a lot of the tasks they are sending, and sending back to the teachers.
Thank you, Edwin.
But you already have to have some infrastructure in place.
Got it. No, thank you for your comments. I'll go for the next question to Muzaffer. So Muzaffer, the question is, migrants are talked about as a key population due to war, job loss, climate. What are the best practices you see in managing COVID-19 with these population? What are the best first steps? Any suggestion on how do we handle migrants?
So can you repeat your question, because your voice is disappeared?
Got it. Okay. So the question is, migrants are talked about as a key population. What are the best practices for managing the migrant population? Any suggestion from your side?
Of course, the migrant population is the most affected, not only against the corona, also they are facing the most poverty problems. They are discriminated.
Sorry, Muzaffer, can you please turn on your video? We can't see you, but yeah, let's go ahead. I think just would like to have your response on that.
My video was on. I don't know what's happening. Anyway,
yeah, we can just have you respond to that question.
I think you got it now.
Yeah, Muzaffer, in the interest of time, let's go ahead. Yeah, we got it.
The migrant population is the most vulnerable population in any host country. They are under discrimination, they get less services, they are abandoned from the general community, and also always they are watched as a threat to the interests of the local communities. And one of the main challenges that we are facing is the integration of the migrant communities with the host communities. This affects, of course, the situation in this pandemic issue also, because really in some countries, especially in Europe or here in Turkey, there is a suspiciousness that the migrant communities are more prone to the pandemic. This may be in one hand true because they don't have access to the health services like the host communities, but on the other hand, the migrant communities are a contribution to the community. We need to increase our public awareness campaigns in order to convince the host communities that these people are equal to them and they are in need of equal treatment and access to their health services, and also to be protected against this pandemic. Because if they are affected from this pandemic, it will be impacted to the local communities also. The other challenge with the migrant communities, disadvantages with the migrant communities is their economic situation and also their legal situation. For example, here in Turkey, we have this 3.5 million Syrian refugees. We don't treat them as refugees according to the UN laws. We are treating them as guests that later on they will leave and they will go to their countries. But such a opportunity is not existing in the reality, because almost more than the half of this community is integrated to Turkey. They establish their businesses, they find their jobs, and some of them they started to get Turkish citizenship. In this case, in Turkey, especially in the communities that have poverty problems, there is a prejudice started against those migrant communities and the refugees. They are thinking that they get their jobs because the jobless rate is very high now in Turkey. They are thinking that they distorted the community. A lot of accusations are starting. This is even it becomes to be a hate problem against the migrant communities. In this case, of course, NGOs like us and all the civil society must do a lot of things of public awareness about the migrant communities' contribution to the host communities, and also to do integration activities that will be very, very crucial in order to protect the migrant communities against the general community, the host community.
Thank you so much. Great. We have a lot of questions coming in from young people. So good to see a lot of young people attending this session. So Bimpi, since you've been working with the young people, a few questions for you. So this question comes from Sadika, who's a 15-year-old and a 1M1B youth leader, and she started a project to teach underserved children English, as that's an essential skill. The question that she's asking it, would it be possible for her to connect with other youth who are doing maybe similar stuff, or get other education resources with the help of your organization, Smile?
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that the positives that have come from the COVID-19 pandemic is globalization. You know, the fact that we're all interconnected now. You're in one part of the world today, I'm in another part of the world. So I know that going forward for us as an organization, would like to interact and engage with young people at different platform countries. So absolutely, I'll be delighted to action with that leader that asked the question and see possible, things that we can possibly do together.
Great. There's another question for you from another 14-year-old who's also 1M1B future leader. She says, I'm interested in SDG for education. In many developing and underserved countries, online resources are not available. How will this affect education for the next generation? And how will the student cope up with this, especially when they are so used to face-to-face instructions?
Right. So that's part of my concern and the concern of everybody who has been monitoring this trend. There's likely to be a regression. If you've been at home for 3-4 months and your colleagues or your peers have opportunity to have had online learning and been able to sustain and engage their online learning, there's going to be a gap.
Those of you not speaking, please go on mute. Yes, Bimbi, go ahead.
Okay, so there's definitely going to be a gap, and I suspect there's going to be a regression. Now, one of the things that I would like to add at this point is, yes, school is actually a safe space for young people, safe space for a lot of young people, because those interactions that they have with their peers is actually very helpful to them. That's part of the things that I hear them saying. They miss their friends, they miss that community. So that is something that's of concern, to their mental health and wellness as well. But more importantly, it's very challenging, and there has to be a multidimensional approach to addressing this. And we haven't even seen the aftermath yet. I still strongly believe that we have to keep evaluating the situation, especially when it has to do with underprivileged, to evaluate this effect of all this as transpiring during this period and afterwards.
Got it. Thank you so much, Wimpy. Thank you. That's very useful. I'll go to Victoria next. Victoria, this is a very relevant question for you. Do you see a lot of non-believers? Some people say that the virus isn't real. How do you deal with that? In New York, we see people without mask and not social distancing. What has worked in getting people to understand that it's real?
Well, that's a good question. Because we really don't discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are. If you have a need and we think we can help it, we try to get you to understand that this is a sickness. It's not something that it's going to go away, but it is real. So what we try to do is we try to give you the information that is put out to us from the CDC, from World Health Organization. And we also tell them about the people that have been affected by this pandemic. So it's really a case of saying you want to stay healthy. We want to keep people healthy. We want to remind them that their families love them and that their families care for them. And, think of their families, think of their friends, think of other people around them, the co-workers, and remind them that it's just a case of taking care of yourself so that you don't disrespect others by not wearing masks or not keeping yourself healthy.
Yeah, I know that's a big concern. Thank you, Victoria. The next question is for me. Manav, kudos for turning crisis into an economic activity. Thank you so much. You mentioned that these women will have a predictable income for the next few months with the new export venture. My question is, what ways 1M1B plans to help these women remain in the workforce even after the pandemic is over? Well, that's thank you, Devashri, for that question. That's so relevant. We're already working on it. We know the pandemic will be over. We are very optimistic about it. And some of our village fellows who are already working on creating their income even beyond the pandemic. One good thing that is happening is that people have become more aware and conscious that they need to contribute to people in the villages. Pre-lockdown, pre-COVID, we had a huge challenge in making people understand why they need to focus on the villages and why we need to really create the 70% of the population, give them economic opportunity. After COVID, that is not the case because people do understand, and there's an increased understanding amongst people. So what our fellows are doing is even looking for orders, like even with school uniforms. So they are in touch with schools now, so that the women in the tailoring unit can supply them clothes for children. Schools are more conscious and they want to contribute and keep on contributing. So we're using schools as an opportunity so that there's a continued income for these women even post-COVID. Thank you for that question. My next question actually is for Edwin. So Edwin, the question is that you deal with a lot of children and you have done a lot of work for them. Do you suggest any steps to be taken to ensure children are safe in many countries, including India?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. And I think so it's very important to identify what are the causes of why the countries and the kids became vulnerable. I think so it's also very important for NGOs who are working with kids, with children, that join effort with government, with local authorities, with welfare authorities. So for instance, as I mentioned, we are partnered with some other organization. For instance, there is one organization called Children First, who is doing a census of all the organizations who are taking care of children. So in order we can join efforts and try to have best practice among us and also identify why this population become vulnerable so we can address that better. And also we are doing in partnership with local government session like this, chat like this, in order to better know each other so we can join effort in order to address the needs that we are identifying in our countries. So I think so that's some of the main strategies that we can implement. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. Yeah, we have a lot of questions coming in and just 10 minutes left. And so we'll need to wrap up, but I'll try to take a few more questions. And Victoria, this one is for you. I'm personally grateful to the Salvation Army. My cousin benefited from the addiction program in Colorado. Do you see an increase in the needs for those programs because of the trauma associated with COVID-19?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we are. We're starting to see an increase in drug addiction, alcohol addiction, because now that the lockdowns are over, people are coming out. Some people have no place to go. Some people don't know what to do. They lost their jobs. They're frustrated. And we see that they're coming to our doors, saying, I have a problem. I have an issue. Or parents are saying their children are suffering from alcoholic or drug addictions. So we see the rise is starting beyond what it normally would. And we see people actually coming to Salvation Army centers and asking for help. And I think it's all out of the pandemic because people have been locked up. They didn't have to deal with anything and they had places to stay. And now they're back out in the street or they lost their jobs. They don't know what to do. So it is an issue right now. And when people come to us, if we can meet that need and help them out and work with them and get them into rehabilitation, we do.
Great. Thanks, Victoria. Quick question for Wimpy before we start wrapping up. Wimpy, this question is from Hugo, who is also a young future leader. And his question is, how do you make sure that you can help students, especially young children, tackle boredom? That's a huge issue now.
That's a huge issue, and unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunately, but this time should have been good time spent with family if people had relationships with family. So most times, some people have used this opportunity to interact with their peers. I mean, form some kind of relationship, play games, watch TV shows, and do some activity around the house with the family and at home. But this also speaks to the fact that there might be some issues in that area, and that's why I mentioned that in some instances, the safe space for young people and young people connect better with their peers. So it makes it super challenging. I have enjoyed this period because I've had the privilege of having my children in my company. So I would say, and then it's because it spanned too long. And the question we get is, how long is it still going to be? Because in Nigeria, the schools are still closed because government is also trying to figure out how best to go about it. And some are speculating maybe it's in September. So I would say if they have books, if they have different, little things, maybe this is a time to write a book. Maybe this is a time to write a song. Maybe this is a time to learn new things. That's what I've encouraged more young people to do, to learn new things. But if it's not something you can do digitally, maybe this is a time for you to look inwards and then write something. I have people that have written 2 books or so in this period. They have used that period, invested the period. So it's not a wasted time during this lockdown. So I just want to encourage them to do things like that, get into, because I know that the routine of doing the same thing morning, afternoon, and night, or just sitting at home can be very, very exhausting and can be very frustrating. So maybe some things that we were looking for time to do, like maybe writing a story about themselves, and so on. Those are the kind of things they can still do for this time. But it is a very challenging time, and I don't want to be pessimistic. But I know that it would have been nice if people could spend this time with family, and then, because once we're all open up, we might not get this opportunity again to be in the same space as we have been over the past 3 or 4 months.
All right. Thank you so much, MP. And I think we need to wrap up. And I would just like to close with the last question from Alessandra, who's saying, how do you all keep up your motivation when there's no end in sight? And a quick response from my side is that, I believe that, leadership needs to thrive more in crisis. And I think this is an opportunity for all of us to step up. This is the time to show up. This is the time to stand up for for yourself and your communities, and make a contribution. I think this is the time for impact. So I think that is the motivation that drives us, and I'm sure that is the motivation that can drive many people to take similar action. And I think we'll be sharing a number of these stories in the times to come. But I think we just need to wrap up. It has been a very engaging discussion today. There are a number of questions that we were not able to take. I think we'll try to answer that post the session, and that can be posted on the website. So please do look out for that. I'm sorry we're not able to take all the questions and probably just need to wrap up. So as we wrap up, there are a couple of slides that we would like to show you on what is next. So can we show the next slide, please? For the survey. So we would like to hear from you, and as I was mentioning, this is the first of the chat series that the UN Department of Global Communication has started to get the civil society, the NGOs together and share best practices so that the impact of all our work can be amplified and we can get into partnerships with one another. So please do share your feedback on did you enjoy the session? Is there any feedback, anything that we can do to improve? Here's an opportunity for you to let us know and let UN Department of Global Communication know if this was a good use of your time. And the next is we would like you and some of the other NGOs who are watching this and would be also looking at the recorded session to submit your stories. So this is the last slide, please. So you can learn more about the civil society, the COVID-19 responses on the website of the civil society, which is www.un.org/civil society. And you can go to the page that is mentioned there, and please do submit your stories. I'm sure there are a number of people who are doing amazing work. And as I was talking to the leadership team at the UN Civil Society, there's amazing stories that are already coming in. Please share them so that the same can be published, the same can be shared with other people, and some best practices could be known and shared. So thank you so much for joining us today. With this, I would like to wrap up. Thank you to all the panelists for sparing your time and contributing. It was very insightful. Thank you so much for all the questions that came in. Thank you so much to the UN Department of Global Communications for giving all of us this opportunity to share our best practices, share our stories, and get an opportunity to contribute so that we can also collaborate with each other. So thank you so much. With that, I would like to wrap up, and thank you all for joining us today.